In ancient Rome, power was never gentle. But even by Roman standards, one emperor crossed boundaries that shocked his own era. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, remembered by history as Caligula. To modern audiences, Caligula has become a symbol of madness, cruelty, and excess. But the truth is more complex and more disturbing. Caligula did not rule Rome like a tyrant in private and a statesman in public. He ruled through intimacy, humiliation, and the deliberate destruction of boundaries that once separated personal desire from imperial authority. For him, power was not simply command, it was access. Access to bodies, access to dignity, access to the idea that nothing, not law, not family, not tradition, could say no. The accounts that survive come from Roman historians such as Suetonius and Cassius Dio. These writers were not moralists by modern standards. They lived in a society where violence, slavery, and exploitation were common. And yet, even they struggled to describe Caligula's private acts without expressing discomfort. What made Caligula different was not desire alone, it was the way intimacy became a weapon. He blurred the line between consent and fear, between private acts and public spectacle, between emperor and God. Caligula demanded not just obedience, but submission. He forced senators to watch. He humiliated noble families. He treated marriage, sexuality, and kinship as tools to remind Rome that nothing belonged to its people anymore, not even their bodies. Modern historians debate how literal some of these accounts are. Ancient sources often exaggerated, political enemies reshaped narratives, but exaggeration itself tells a story. Because for these rumors to spread and survive, they had to feel believable. They reflected a truth Romans recognized. Caligula no longer respected the invisible limits that held society together. This documentary examines 5 intimate acts attributed to Caligula, not to sensationalize them, but to understand what they reveal about unchecked power. These are not stories about pleasure, they are stories about domination, about what happens when an emperor stops seeing people as human and starts seeing them as extensions of his will. And as we move through these accounts, one question becomes unavoidable. Was Caligula insane? Or was he simply a man who discovered what absolute power allows and decided to use it? Among the most controversial accusations associated with Emperor Caligula are claims that he deliberately violated the most fundamental family boundaries of Roman society. Ancient Roman historians did not record these allegations casually. In Rome, family structure was sacred. Even emperors were expected to uphold certain moral limits in public appearance, regardless of private behavior. Yet writers such as Suetonius and Cassius Dio described Caligula as a ruler who openly disregarded these expectations. According to their accounts, Caligula treated his own family members not as protected relatives, but as extensions of imperial authority. This behavior was not concealed. It was visible, deliberate, and symbolic. One sister in particular, Drusilla, was reportedly elevated to a uniquely prominent status within the imperial household. After her death, Caligula ordered her deification, a move that deeply unsettled Roman society. The shock was not in the honor itself, but in what it represented. By transforming a close familial relationship into a religious and political symbol, Caligula blurred distinctions that Romans believed were essential to social order. Family, faith, and authority were no longer separate domains. They flowed directly from the emperor's will. Modern historians continue to debate the literal accuracy of these accounts. Ancient sources often relied on rumor, exaggeration, or political bias. However, the persistence of these stories reveals something important. They reflected how Romans experienced Caligula's rule. A reign in which no boundary appeared inviolable, where even the most private structures of society felt exposed to imperial control. By challenging taboos that even other emperors respected, Caligula demonstrated that tradition itself was subordinate to him. This was not an act of personal indulgence, it was an assertion of supremacy. If family bonds could be redefined at the emperor's discretion, then no social rule was beyond alteration. In this way, Caligula communicated a clear message to Rome's elite. There were no protected spaces, no inherited rights, and no moral frameworks immune to authority. This moment marked a turning point. Power under Caligula no longer operated through law or custom alone. It operated through the visible dismantling of limits. And once those limits were broken at the highest level of society, everyone below understood the implication. Nothing was off limits anymore.
Caligula did not limit his most disturbing behavior to private spaces. One of the defining features of his reign was the deliberate transformation of intimacy into public humiliation. Roman society valued dignity, especially among the elite. Even in a brutal empire, appearances mattered. Reputation was currency. Caligula understood this and weaponized it. According to multiple ancient sources, he routinely violated the privacy of senators and noble families by involving their wives in his personal life. Not discreetly, not quietly. He summoned them openly, sometimes during banquets, sometimes in full view of their husbands. The purpose was not desire, it was domination. By doing this publicly, Caligula sent a clear message to Rome's ruling class. Their status offered no protection. These men governed provinces, commanded legions, and shaped imperial policy, yet they could not protect their own households from the emperor's reach. In one account, Caligula would openly comment on the bodies and appearances of senators' wives during public dinners. He treated these moments as performances, reducing individuals to objects of imperial judgment. The humiliation was intentional. By forcing elite Romans to remain silent in these moments, Caligula reminded them that resistance was impossible. To object would be treason. To react emotionally would be weakness. And so they sat, watched, endured. This practice eroded one of the last boundaries separating imperial authority from personal life. Marriage, once a symbol of stability and lineage, became another domain controlled by the emperor. Caligula reportedly extended this behavior beyond the elite. Performers, servants, and courtiers were subjected to similar treatment, not because they mattered politically, but because visibility amplified fear. The more people witnessed these acts, the more effective they became. Fear spreads faster when it is public. Modern historians have noted that such behavior fits a broader pattern of authoritarian control. Tyrants often seek not only obedience, but psychological submission. By humiliating others sexually without explicit violence, Caligula achieved something more lasting. He destroyed confidence. Men who feared losing honor could not organize resistance. Families humiliated publicly could not reclaim authority. Everything became conditional, granted only at the emperor's pleasure. Whether every detail of these accounts is historically precise is still debated, but the broader pattern is undeniable. Caligula consistently turned personal interactions into demonstrations of absolute power. Intimacy was no longer private. It was a stage, and every spectator learned the same lesson.
If the emperor could invade the most personal spaces of Rome's most powerful families, then no space was truly safe. This was not excess, it was strategy.
In Roman society, marriage was not merely a personal arrangement, it was a political institution. Families used marriage to secure alliances, preserve lineage, and maintain social order. Even emperors were expected to respect this structure, at least outwardly. Caligula did not. Ancient sources describe how he routinely treated marriage as a temporary inconvenience rather than a binding institution. He would take wives from their husbands only to return them later, sometimes with commentary on their performance. These acts were not framed as violence, they were framed as privilege. This distinction mattered. By presenting his actions as imperial rights rather than crimes, Caligula transformed coercion into ceremony. What appeared voluntary on the surface was enforced by fear beneath it. Consent under such conditions becomes meaningless. A senator could not refuse the emperor, a husband could not object, a woman could not safely decline. The absence of physical force did not make these acts less oppressive, it made them more insidious, because everyone involved was forced to participate in the illusion. Publicly, these interactions were treated as honors. Privately, they were understood as threats. This duality allowed Caligula to maintain plausible deniability. No laws were formally broken, no edicts were issued, and yet the social fabric was systematically dismantled. Marriage lost its protective function, family loyalty was undermined, trust between Rome's elites eroded. By repeatedly violating marital boundaries, Caligula ensured that no alliance could exist without his approval. No bond was stable, no relationship secure. Even his own marriages reflected this instability. Caligula married multiple times in rapid succession, often with little regard for tradition. These unions appeared transactional, symbolic, rather than personal. Each marriage reinforced the same message. Relationships existed at the emperor's discretion. Some historians argue that Caligula's behavior was performative, a way to dramatize his dominance rather than satisfy personal desire. By treating marriage as disposable, he stripped it of moral authority. And in doing so, he removed one of the few remaining social limits on imperial power. If marriage could be overridden casually, then no social contract was sacred. This strategy served a purpose. A society without stable private bonds is easier to control. When people cannot rely on family or tradition, they rely on authority. Caligula did not need loyalty, he needed dependency. By collapsing the boundary between public power and private life, he ensured that every Roman relationship existed under the shadow of the throne. And once that shadow extended into the home, resistance became unthinkable. Because when even love and commitment require permission, freedom has already vanished. By the final years of Caligula's reign, a clear pattern had emerged. His behavior was no longer shocking because of its novelty, it was shocking because of its consistency. Again and again, Caligula returned to the same theme, the elimination of boundaries. Legal boundaries, moral boundaries, familial boundaries, and finally, psychological ones. What distinguished Caligula from other violent or corrupt rulers was not cruelty alone. Rome had endured cruel emperors before. What made him different was his insistence on demonstrating that nothing was beyond his reach. Every intimate violation described by ancient sources points to the same underlying impulse, the need to confirm absolute power through personal domination. Modern psychology offers a framework for understanding this pattern. When authority is unchecked, the individual holding it begins to experience reality differently. Limits are no longer external, they become optional. Other people cease to be independent actors and become instruments.
In such conditions, intimacy becomes dangerous, not because of desire, but because intimacy is where trust, vulnerability, and identity reside. By invading that space, Caligula proved to himself and to Rome that resistance was impossible. Whether all accounts of his behavior are literally true is still debated by historians. Ancient writers often exaggerated, political narratives were shaped by successors. But exaggeration does not emerge from nothing. The stories that survived did so because they expressed a deeper truth about Caligula's rule. He ruled through fear that reached into the most personal areas of life. This was not madness in the theatrical sense. It was a collapse of restraint, a ruler who no longer recognized himself as bound by the same reality as others. And this is where Caligula's story becomes more than historical curiosity. Because his reign illustrates a universal principle, power without accountability does not simply corrupt, it isolates. As Caligula dismantled every boundary around him, he also dismantled the structures that protected him. Senators lived in fear, allies became enemies, loyalty eroded into silence. Eventually, even the illusion of consent could no longer be maintained. In 41 AD, Caligula was assassinated by members of his own guard. His death was swift, but the damage he inflicted lingered. Rome moved quickly to erase his image. Statues were destroyed, his name was removed from inscriptions. Yet, the stories remained, not as entertainment, but as warnings. Caligula's private acts are disturbing not because they are ancient scandals, but because they reveal how easily power can hollow out humanity when nothing pushes back. His reign reminds us that tyranny does not always announce itself through mass violence. Sometimes it enters quietly, through humiliation, coercion, and the slow erosion of personal boundaries. And by the time society realizes what has been lost, the limits that once protected it are already gone.